Handling the effects of water management on the home is of primary concern for the longevity of the masonry and other components of the home. Managing surface water by directing water away from your home is the primary defense for keeping your basement dry and avoiding costly water damage. It's important to also consider where this water gets redirected to. Your home has several systems that work in conjunction with each other to help control and manage all forms of irrigation, precipitation, and groundwater. Waterproofing is a process used to keep water out of structures to safeguard the home. It's essential while constructing a building to consider maintaining structures, since water can cause significant damage if it infiltrates inside the structure. This is especially true with concrete and masonry structures, which may suffer from cracking due to freeze-thaw cycles or water pressure built up behind walls. One of the main reasons for waterproofing to fail, or why your foundation structure is not managing water, is simply poor preparation and installation of the components of your foundation structure and water management ingredients. An estimated 90% of waterproofing failures can come from poor handiwork. In this video, you will see extensive waterproofing on both the exterior and interior of the home to fully solve major problems and keep the house dry and safe going forward. A&A Masonry, an award-winning company servicing the Greater Toronto Area and the Golden Horseshoe.
Hi, and welcome to the first day of this extensive renovation from ceiling, rooftop, down to subgrade to actually the footings. We already have the roofing contractor up on the roof. They've been dealing with it, temporary sealing it, getting ready for us to remove all the stucco exterior. It's a complete mess. What was done there, it doesn't look good. It's not handling water properly. So we're going to combine that with a proper roof on this box type of home to manage the water. This thing has always been about handling water, but also making the stucco look beautiful in the finish of the house. This type of neighborhood, this type of location, it definitely demands that kind of attention, but we want to make sure that everything is safe, the exterior from water and any kind of water seepage. We're also dealing on a high water table. So the first part of this job was to do an exploratory dig. And sometimes when we don't know exactly what we're dealing with, we have an engineer report, evidence from the homeowner's experience, what we can see, kind of figure. We need to explore by excavating a certain section just to get down there and see what is done, what maybe is missed, what is not working and functioning properly. So come on, let me show you what we found once we started excavating the front part of this home. Okay, as I mentioned, we had to do an exploratory dig to figure out what is going on and what we don't know, what we can't see. And we do that by first introducing an exploratory dig. We just want to have access to take a look at it. This homeowner has already had engineer reports for the water flow. They're on a high water table. We had a deluge of rain, so we have to deal with this in a more extreme way. But the first thing is to see what we're actually dealing with to make sure that the existing waterproofing, to what point is it working, functioning, and compliant. Here you can see what they had originally. This is just a temporary corrugated pipe we're using to take the discharge valve, the water from the discharge valve, and to throw it to the back of the house because it was coming originally before into this plastic piping underground into what we call a French drain, which is a big pit with crushed stone, and it gives a lot of air in there so water can filter through it and it can hold water in the subgrade. The problem is that this was moving the water too quickly into this subgrade French pit and recycling back, getting under the house. This is the cold room under here into the sump pump, and this sump pump was discharging, whether it was raining or not, virtually every minute or two. It's now down to about every 5-10 minutes. So we've reduced that because the cycle of water is not going back. The other thing we noted, and this was also in the engineer report, is this corrugated board, the dimple board, the delta board that goes up against the foundation. You see this black membrane here. It was reported that, and I'll show you in the back where you can see where it's getting pulled down from the mounting anchors that holds it against the foundation wall. And we notice here that the dimple board is just not quite fully down around the footing in which to encase and hold the water away from the foundation footing to get underneath the house, number one, but also to make it easy and drive it into the weeping tile, a similar corrugated pipe with holes in it that will take the water, move it, bring it under the cold room foundation into the sump pump and discharge it out. That goes around the exterior of the house. From what we can see here, it's not done correctly. So let me show you what we've got in store for this to make this home completely waterproof. As we were going through this, initially was to reconfigure and deal with this part of it because this was the main source, and also an excessive amount of water recycling over and over again. In that time, with this homeowner, we had a huge deluge of a rainstorm, and a lot of these homes in this area got flooded. So we're dealing with it in a full scale, and I'm going to show you what we have to do to make this home watertight. Now, when we deal with these things, it's important to understand, and we get a lot of calls on waterproofing alone this week because of all this rain and flooding in the Greater Toronto area. It's just been inundating our office with calls for waterproofing that's been done. It's not working properly. It always has to do with the installation of the sump pump in most cases. It's improperly done, the discharge valve, and just certain things like this that aren't to code. When I mentioned this area, I mean when you have a basement walkout and you have a drain in front of an entranceway into the basement. We're below ground, so gravity is going to throw water here. So this has to be to code. What I mean by that is that it's the right plumbing appliances that are in there, the piping, the drain connections, and it has to throw it into that either weeping system that I showed you in the front, the corrugated tile that goes around the footing of the house and takes the water away. In this case, that is not working properly, so we're going to bring this water actually under the house into a sump pump specifically just for this water in the surface area, which is maybe 35, 40 square feet at most, and it's going to handle it. And then the discharge valve from that sump pump is going to bring it up like any other water system, move through the walls of the house and through the wall and discharge it out to the ground level and let gravity again pull it away naturally towards the lake, which is in front of me here. Going towards the lake, the slope of the ground will take it away so it won't recycle like that problem we have in the front. Now I'm standing in the back of this home, and again, the issue was how do we move the water? We have to take advantage of the grading in this neighborhood. The lake is in front of me, so it wants to go from the back of the house away from the house towards the lake. That's the lower lay of the land. In this case, we were having difficulties because the sump pump was discharging in the front. As I showed you there, it was just recycling the water because gravity was pulling it back. So it's really inconsistent, the grading in this neighborhood with the houses around us. So it's really challenging. So we have to do interior waterproofing, but in this case here, we're going to do it in a little bit of aggressive manner to really manage the water table. And the water table below this is high because we're so close to the lake. So when the ground gets saturated and swells with water, from rain, snow melting, ice melting, and so forth, the pressure in the ground builds up and it actually wants to come through the basement floor. So if you don't have a proper weeping system around the house, which is that corrugated pipe that would wrap around the entire foundation footing, the footing part of the home, and move the water either back or front into the city services, you've got a problem. And that's what happened in this case. The water came through the floor, flooded their beautiful basement, inches of water. That's all got to be dealt with, and we now have to do a water management system, starting with the back drain here on these walkouts. It's really important that the drain that is in front of the door to protect the water, or to prevent water from actually getting into the household, there has to be a proper drain. It has to be to code. If it's not connected to the weeping system, there's a sump pump that's required. I'll show you what I'm talking about, and I'll show you what we're going to be doing on the inside, but we are going to make this house watertight. Here inside, we really had to think the water management system. We really had to think it through. I had to bring in a lot of my experts in. They're all A&A employees, lots of years and years of experience and things to do in dealing with high water tables, sump pump installation, inefficient exterior waterproofing, bad grading, things of that nature. Now, when we got in here, you can see it was a finished basement. We were prepping it, just getting ready. The crew's coming in. We're going to demolish all these walls. We're going to break the floor. We're going to expose it down to the raw footing and foundation of the house from the interior. It's what we call interior waterproofing. The sump pump, just to give you a little bit of reality as to where I'm standing, In front of me is the back walkout that you just saw me talk about, the drain. Towards and behind me here, over to my right, is the front cold room where the sump pump is. And this grading over here, when we took away the kitchen cabinetry, this was all a finished kitchen here, we noticed that this is getting excessive mold and moisture that's coming in that was not noticeable before. It wasn't, you can see this is not just a one-time water experience. It's been seeping here, and something that we may not have noticed beforehand if we were just dealing with everything else. But now that we came to this point, it's actually somewhat of a blessing because we can deal with everything all at once. When we're looking at the grading, as I just talked about in the back of the house, is that the side neighbor is a finished property. It's all fully hardscaped. Their sidewalk pathway is all interlocking stone. They have the nice draining systems for their property, but we're slightly lower. So they're throwing all that surface water, the downspouts coming off the roof line. That's all going to be pushed into this area here. There's 3/4 inch stone, but it's not enough. It's still sloped and slanted towards the house. That means the water with gravity is going to run this way before it's trying to make its way back towards the lake. The window wells were also a mess, so we're dealing with those as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to do interior waterproofing. So we're going to excavate or demolish all this material. Unfortunate, but it has to be. We have to get to the bare foundation, the concrete foundation wall. We have to break the floor at least a foot off and get to the footing which the foundation wall is sitting on, so we can install a weeping system in there. We're going to do it we're going to divide it into sections. So we're going to cut the home in half essentially for weeping system. So there's individual sump pumps. So this half of the house on my left side here, from the back to the front, is going to be with a sump pump that we're going to install just behind this kitchen here in a utility room, and we're going to throw the water onto this side. The other side of the house, we got to move it back towards the front, which is going to take care of all this water and subsurface water that's getting with the hydrostatic pressure. Being on a high water table, will get pushed to the front. We're going to redo and install a proper sump pump and configuration for the exterior weeping system that is kind of quasi working properly, may or may not be working properly, but whatever water it receives, it'll also be installed in what we call the cold room, cold cellar that's underneath the staircase. And then we have our fourth sump pump, which is specifically just for the drain. Again, that's something that has to be to code. If we connect it to all the other sump pumps and they get overwhelmed with a high water table, that drain in the front, in the back of the house here in the basement walkout will want to rise up, and that water will seep through the door into the basement. So this house is going to have 4 sump pumps, not necessarily uncommon in a high water table in a basement that's as large as this, but it's required, and it is going to keep it watertight. So it's going to be completely dry and throwing the water. Once we do that, then we can see how the water is flowing on the grade around the house with the neighbors, the front, the inconsistencies. Then we can deal with that if that's truly an issue. And if it's not picked up by just natural grading and absorption, that is very natural as the rain falls. So let's call the guys in here. They're going to start demoing, make a mess of it. But when it's done, they've already got their contractor ready to finish this basement up. It's going to be beautiful, but they know this time when they do it, they're not going to have any water issues, any mold issues, which is a big concern for this new family that's got this house. They want it nice and dry and clean of all mold and mildew. Now, here we are in the cold room or the cold cellar. A lot of homes in Toronto, basement, they need like a nice cold room. Just simply means there's no air circulation in there other than just a vent. There's no heating and HVAC, as we call it. But it was a good place for them to install the original sump pump, the prior owners here. A lot of times when we get these calls for waterproofing, is always a sump pump has been installed incorrectly or slightly off, and it's just the way water wants to flow. In this case, we think it's too low, so the floaters are sitting right at water level, and it's a constant and consistent level. So every 2 or 3 minutes, it was discharging and then recycling back in and filling up and discharging again. We're going to correct that, and that's for the entire exterior weeping system, which is inferior and is not working, obviously, because with the recent flood that this homeowner experienced, it has to be interior waterproofing. So we're going to run the weeping tile again on the interior, and we're going to, one half of it is going to be onto that side, as I mentioned. The other half of the house is going to be running along this wall, and we're going to bring that sump pump in there. So this cold room is going to have 2 sump pumps. So we're going to essentially have 4 sump pumps in this entire house, balancing the flow of water, managing it again, keeping it away from the basement, out onto the surface. And if there's a grading issue, we can deal with that once we see how the water is flowing at that time. But this is just a typical call and repair that we most commonly have to do when waterproofing has been done and it's not doing the trick.
The crews start with wall demolition down to the foundation in this interior part of the waterproofing job. You can see many examples of mold and damage to the wall that are now exposed as the demolition continues. Interior basement waterproofing involves managing water that enters the basement by installing drainage systems, applying sealants, and using sump pumps to direct water out of the home. In the case of this home, the house foundation was built on footings that were not made to code and not of standard width. You can see here that the footings are not symmetrical and vary in width as they go along the wall. This variation can prevent the crew from doing interior waterproofing in some of the areas due to the accessibility. In this part of the house, the furnace was standing adjacent to the wall where the footings were too wide. In this case, the crew would have to dismantle and remove the whole furnace to do the interior waterproofing on that portion of the wall, which was not an option. So for that portion of the home, exterior waterproofing is needed to compensate for the poor structure. You can see here where the floor had to be broken to have access down to the footings to install the waterproofing components. Small portions of the footings also required to be chipped away to make room to install proper drainage systems to manage the water. Here you can see the dimple board now installed with the gravel and drainage systems in place. Once all this is done, the crew then put in the concrete to the same level as the floor. You can see here where they also installed a sump pump next to the walkout doorway.
Okay, this waterproofing job is done and it's really feeling dry in here. It's really feeling solid and beefy. Let the water come. We've got it managed. I'm standing next to one of 4 sump pumps that we had to install in this basement, in addition to the original sump pump, which was managing the exterior of this house. This sump pump is specifically for the exterior drain in front of this doorway, which is a basement walkout, so it's subgrade, meaning the water will come down the steps, hit the doorway, so there's got to be a drain there. Originally, it wasn't to code. The pipes weren't fitting well. They were connected in mismatched areas, and it was not throwing the water away. Originally, we thought we would have to demolish that concrete to access that drain pipe and install a proper to-code piping. We were able to access it from this floor here, so we just managed to take a little bit more of the interior floor. And in doing that, we connected it and continued it with the original catch basin, which goes to the drain. And if it backs up, there's a Y valve, so it will run into this sump pump. And specifically for the drain, this will handle any backflow of water. And this is required. It has to be within about 3 feet of the drain. Come on, I'll show you the other sump pumps and what we had to do for this interior waterproofing. Okay, here we are in the front part of the house. And now this presented a little bit of a problem and challenge. It's always access. And when you start to break the floor, you start to see what's going on underneath. In this case, we had to deal with inconsistent footings that were poured. Too wide, too high, too close to the concrete floor. Again, we had to chip away the footing somewhat just to bring the dimple board down so it could hold the water on the outside of the dimple board and push it underneath the floor to meet the weeping system. We were unable to draw it all the way around. These walls continue on down. The footings are a little bit of a mess. So what we did is we just treated this as a separate interior waterproofing system. That's the reason why we have 4 additional sump pumps, 1 for just this room. We were able to bring it into the cold room, so you're not going to see any kind of sump pump here when this room is finished. It's going to be absolutely beautiful again. No sump pump, discharge valves, or anything of that nature. But it's nice and solid. So any water that gets beyond the exterior waterproofing, this is the front of the house. This was a huge issue. The water wants to move to the back of the house by grade. So we know there's going to be a force there. We now have weeping systems in here, and it's all drawing it into the sump pump. It'll throw it back on the surface, and we'll manage it from there. But this room is solid. We also had to deal with some other issues because of the footing on this side of the house beyond this room. And I'm going to show you that now. Okay, this is the front of the room on the other side of the wall. As you know, we had to do the separate waterproofing system for that particular room. As we tried to come in here, you can see I'm standing on some new concrete. We tried to chisel down through here. It's literally more than a foot deep of concrete. and we were not able to bring, again, the weeping system through. This was the challenge. The other thing is, as I look beyond this tile, this is the bathroom, the shower wall, the footings are wide, so much so that the furnace is sitting about 8 to 10 inches off the side of the wall there. So we would not be able to go under the furnace unless we dismantled and took the furnace out. The solution to that was, at this particular point, we draw the water and do the waterproofing on the exterior of this wall. It's completely dry. The weeping system is sitting on the exterior, and it gets drawn back into the interior, right into the laundry room, 2 rooms down from here. So we can bypass any super challenging efforts to get access to the footing on the inside. It just did not make sense. And that was something that we're able to do. And that's, again, just the way you move water. You have to think these things through. And sometimes there's unforeseen problems that you have to address. The nice thing is that we understand that. We were able to walk this homeowner through. And just as I'm here in this basement, it's very, very dry. We've been having lots of rain the last couple of days. There's not a sense that any moisture is getting through. Everything is naturally drying up in the foundation walls and the floor, and all the systems are working beautifully. Okay, that's it. We're done here on the interior waterproofing. This place is completely dry, this home. It's now time to turn it over to the contractors, let them do the finishing work, and I know it's going to be beautiful when it's done. It is dry as water wants to rush up on a high water table. It's going to be throwing water in all directions, but mostly it's going to draw everything to the back of the house and away from the house, which is exactly what we want. So now the contractors are going to come in and finish it. In this case, we did finish the floor per the request of the homeowner to match the existing tile height. And they're going to do a new subfloor and then finish with a floor on top of that, and then finish this basement living space. And again, it's going to be perfectly dry for years and years to come. Never going to have to be a problem.
And now, with the interior waterproofing complete, as well as the exterior waterproofing that was required for this home, with all sump pumps and water management solutions in place, this home is fully set up to stay dry for a long, long time. So if you're having problems with effervescence, hairline cracks, musty odors, damp air, mold, water stains, or other symptoms of water getting into the house, be sure to call the professionals at A&A. One of their logistics specialists will come by and inspect your property and give you the top recommendations to keep your home dry and safe for many years to come. To schedule your next project, contact A&A Masonry today.